Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the West End Imps show. Back for another episode. Before we do get started, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe as we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. I apologise for my voice. I am a little bit hungover this Sunday morning. Went out last night, had a great time. Also, my voice still hurts from shouting at the referee. But before we get any further, let me introduce Chris. Chris, how are we doing, mate?
Morning, mate. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very well indeed.
Good. Glad to see you didn't quite get on the ale the same as I did, and being sensible and having a drink of coffee or tea this morning. Right, let's talk about the game then, Chris. When the team came out, I think I think we were pretty happy, weren't we? The fact that we matched them up and gone to a back three, back five. And to be honest, I thought we were very comfortable in that first half with that team. So what did you make of the team when it first came out at 2:00?
Yeah, I was quite like the look of it. I thought matching them up was probably a really good thing to do on Mr. Kennedy's side. We know Bolton are a pretty decent side. And I kind of felt a little bit of defensive solidity after the kind of carnage and chaos of Bristol away. And then I didn't go to the game against Doncaster, but, from hearing and listening to it, probably a little bit of defensive solidity at the back to have that 5 or that 3 was probably what we needed so that we could at least keep a foothold in the game. I like the look of it. I don't know what kind of Tom Hopper's situation is, whether he's picked up a knock. I've not heard, but pleased that pleased before the game that Ben House kept his place, because I think he has been in good form. It was what I thought was going to be a pretty good game of football, and no kind of concerns about the starting 11 at all.
And then first half, I think we actually did really well tactically. I think we had control of the football for a large period. That first sort of 15-20 minute period, we had a couple of opportunities as well. They also did. Obviously, that they've got some top players in their ranks, so they're always going to make opportunities. But nothing that I felt really threatened us in that first sort of period of the game. Until the incident, but. Probably should have been 1-0 up, shouldn't we? Jack Diamond probably should have put the ball past James Trafford, but he decided to go round him, which was a bit of a bizarre choice.
Yeah, I thought we started really well. We first maybe 10-15 minutes looked pretty strong, looked good going forward. That Jack Diamond opportunity, I think, came kind of within the first 10 minutes. And for me, at the time, we were there and said, I just felt, for me, should have probably just tried to poke it under the keeper rather than try and take it around him and gone first time. It was a great opportunity. But, it was a good start. I felt we had a really good, strong start. They started quite well as well. It was all set up to be a really good game of football. And then, yes, we will obviously talk about the incident, which, having looked back at it, is not an actual incident, really, is it? We were enraged at the time.
I think the reason that we're enraged, Chris, is because the referee doesn't give the penalty. It's a shirt pull. Adam Jackson does pull the shirt of the attacker. Yeah. However, you could say that in a penalty incident area with corners and stuff like that, that sort of thing happens all the time and goes unnoticed. What I would say, I think the supporters who were certainly there were annoyed with the fact that the referee, who was maybe between 8 to 10 yards away from the actual incident, decided not to give the penalty, gave a goal kick, and then I'm not sure who it was, whether it was the fourth official, whether it was the linesman, or what happened. That decision was reversed. Obviously, that is in the laws of the game. They are allowed to do that. But when the referee it often doesn't happen, does it? It doesn't happen very often that another official outdoes the referee, which is why our supporters are probably a bit more outraged.
Yeah, I think from where we were at the time, we were, it didn't look like a penalty. Obviously, we were at the other end behind the goal, and you can't really see a shirt pull from there. I felt very much like the ref had made such a clear, strong decision. You know, he put the motions in, you know, put his arms across towards the ground, pointed for a goal kick. And then it was just a weird minute or so where he was reaching for a card, and I was there thinking, well, he's booking their player for diving. And then all of a sudden he's booking Jackson, and they're putting the ball on the spot. And it was just a very weird overturn of the decision that he'd initially made, because I don't know who has made that decision. I wasn't looking at the linesman. I can only assume it's the linesman. But for me, how is that linesman seeing a shirt pull from sort of 30 yards away through a cluster of players? Irrespective of all of that, I think it was really, really poor for Jackson to have done that. You know, I mean, he's going nowhere. He just needs to shepherd him out. He's probably going to come out of the box again, go towards the corner flag, and they restart. But it was a poor decision from Jacko. At the time, we were enraged by the decision. Looking back on it, I'm still a bit annoyed about the way the decision was come to eventually, because I don't know who's made that decision and who's said to the ref, actually, that's a penalty. But it's the right decision ultimately.
Yeah, and given what happened in the second half, it's very surprising that linesman could see that, but not something that happened in their penalty box that we'll come on to. That gave Bolton a bit of confidence. Then they started to ping the ball around pretty nicely. They carved us open at will. And to be honest, we were sort of longing for the half-time whistle, weren't we? Get in at 1-0, regroup, and hope that we can do something in the second half. And we actually started the second half pretty similar to the first half. I thought we started pretty well. A few sloppy passes from the likes of Sorensen. Virtue played a couple of bad balls as well. We got to see Danny Mandrew for the first time, who we believed was some sort of make-believe YouTube all-star character. He actually exists, and he came onto the pitch. And to be honest, I think he did pretty well when he came on. He really impacted the final third. Ben House, obviously, I think it's pretty fair to say he had a poor game from his standards over the last couple of weeks. But even in the second half, Chris, we had opportunities, didn't we? We just didn't take them. And then obviously the incidents that I'm referring to there, it looked very similar, that we probably could have had a claim for penalty. I think it was on Jack Diamond in the second half, and then obviously the choke slam, whatever you want to call it. George Johnston, I think his name is, clearly on the floor, gets his hand round the neck of Adam Jackson and drags him to the floor, which for me is violent conduct, a red card, and probably a penalty. But the linesman and the referee, very much home refs. We had one against Derby. There's no shame in saying it, but it's just disappointing that the standard of officiating, if it was the same for everybody, it would be all right. But it's not consistent, and I think that's what gripes supporters the most.
Yeah, I think you've covered a lot there in that little monologue, so I'll try and backtrack to the start of the second half. I felt throughout the game we weren't on it, in terms of there was a lot of inconsistency. Some of the passing was going astray. You know, it didn't look like we had a particularly good control of the game. I felt after they'd scored the penalty in the first half, we were a bit overrun in the middle, and at halftime, my personal feeling was, actually, do we go back to a 4 in defence and bring in an extra player in the middle? Because I felt that's where we were losing the game a lot. There was too much space and time for them to move forward, and then they were just pinging it out wide, and they just had a lot more space and time than perhaps they should have had. I think the Jackson incident for me was just a ridiculous decision, how that's not been given. You know, Jackson goes down and then their player kind of falls over him, I think. And then in getting up, he's just put his hand over his face and just sort of shoved him to the ground. And I just can't understand why no one's picked up on that. Positives, Mandrew, I thought, really looked like a great player. You know, I'm really excited to see him on the team, in the team and on the grass. And I think he showed in that kind of little 20-minute cameo or so that he's going to have an awful lot to offer. Looked like a really exciting player. But again, decision-making, basic errors were made. I just think that kind of spread throughout the team a little bit. And there was kind of no one that really stood out. Man of the match will be interesting at the end, because I don't know who we would go for. But yeah, I just think that once they'd gone ahead, I found it quite hard to see how and where we were going to get a goal from.
Yeah, for a side that's only conceded 6 goals this season. You can see why they're so tight at the back. They were very well organised defensively. Look, there is no shame of losing to Bolton. Better sides than us will go to the Reach and have a hard time. They're a very tidy outfit and probably one that's going to justify finishing in the top 6 sort of around the end of the season. But go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say that they are a good team, but I think overall, if we kind of just step back from the emotional element of we've been beaten and the manner of the defeat, you know, like you say, losing away to Bolton's no disgrace, but actually 2 individual errors have led to their 2 goals. They've not created those goals in a sense. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you take those 2 errors out, we've matched them. We've done okay. You know, we weren't brilliant. They're a decent side. We know that. And I think it's just kind of, we've got to find that level of consistency and that level of commitment that we have seen. You know, there's no way that, you know, Kennedy, I don't think, can be at fault for those individual errors, and we've seen it in previous games where individual errors have cost us rather than a whole team performance. So, I still feel, you know, positive moving forward. And, you know, did we expect to beat Derby at home or Bristol Rovers away? Probably not. You know, I don't know. It's just one of those for me that I think a little bit of perspective and a little bit of just stepping away from that emotion and thinking, actually, you know, a 2-0 defeat away at Bolton, like you've said, better teams than us, bigger teams than us are going to go there and find it very difficult.
Yeah, we'll go on to the second error then. Probably the one that we're more disappointed in. Sean Rowan, I can understand he is a young professional. He's learning his way in the game, and I'm sure Sean will hold his hand up. Obviously, we were pretty enraged with him at the time, as I think everybody associated to Lincoln City was pretty annoyed with what he did. It's just sloppy, underrates, poor throwback, straight to, I think it was Dion Giles, and he just, or Bakayoko, I can't remember which one it was, slid the ball into John Daddy Bodvars, and it was too easy, wasn't it? It was, I hate to use the word, but it truly was pathetic.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that on the Sunday grass in an under-10s match. You know, it was inexplicable and inexcusable. But it's done. It's a real shame because I thought actually up to that one incident, Sean had a pretty good game, in fairness. You know, he'd done a pretty good job. I don't think he linked up as well with Diamond as he has done in the last couple of games, perhaps. But, you know, I just couldn't process what was going through his head, you know, to have made such a crazy decision and error. You know, it was baffling. Decent finish by their fella, to be fair.
Yeah, just really irritating that we've lost 2-0 on both individual goals. I'm sure Sean will be better off for making the mistake, but in the moment, it
and actually. Yeah, and I think fair play to Sean because he came out and did the radio interview afterwards, and I think that sort of says a lot about his character, that he wasn't shying away from it. And you know, I thought that was actually, you know, fair play to him for having the balls to come out and do that after such a, you know, I mean, it killed the game, didn't it? I don't think we were in the game particularly, but at that point there was just no way we were going to come back and do anything.
We'll go to man of the match then before we do finish, because I feel if we keep talking about it, we'll just start crying. Well, I certainly know I really cried on the way home. Man of the match, Chris. It's difficult. Who have you gone for?
Well, I thought I've kind of gone for 2 players, if I'm allowed to. One first half, one second half, because I can't really make up my mind. So I thought actually first half, I thought TJ played well.
Yeah.
I thought he was given clear instruction to kind of basically almost play as a right winger. And he looked threatening, and he did a lot of really positive things. Second half, I think for me, and perhaps overall, I know it was a real short cameo, but Mandrew really impressed me when he came on. I think he wanted to get involved. He was going after the ball. Clearly, you know, he'd been told to. He was playing very narrow, almost as a sort of 10s second striker. and he had a big influence. And I think if we can get him up to full match fitness over the next couple of games, I'm really excited to see, you know, him where he fits in, you know, whether that's a tweak in the formation or whether he does play kind of a narrow wide role. But, you know, if you're thinking moving forward, Diamond one side, Andrew possibly the other side, and then either Hopper or House through the middle, I think that's a pretty decent line, you know, up top for me. So I think I'll stick my hat on Mandrio, even though it was a short cameo. Who have you gone for?
I decided I'm going to go for Jack Diamond. Same sort of reasons, really. I thought he was one of the only players that were actually trying to progress us up the pitch, and he made a lot of very dangerous runs. Yes, he probably should have scored, but I think he did his defensive job pretty well. Then he get down the left-hand side, bar the mistake from Sean, and his endeavour and his willingness to run all day is pretty evident. So I think we've got a good player there. So that is going to wrap it up because we have got things to do this afternoon. But massive thanks for coming on again, Chris. You're
welcome. Can I plug something?
Hey,
can I plug something this week?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Just, I'm sure most have seen already, but Toby Freeston on Twitter has sent out a Just Giving link for some fundraising for 617. So if anyone's in a position where they can contribute to that or to share, then I'm sure that would be greatly appreciated by the lads in the 617. They do such an important, integral part of our fan base, and they do a lot of really positive work. So check that out.
Crikey, Chris has something to plug this week. That does make sense.
It won't be very often that I do, but I just saw that this morning, and I just think, you know, it's something. You know, a small amount helps with those brilliant displays, and some. I know that they're wanting to kind of push forward a little bit more merchandise stuff. So I think it's just for a good cause within our sort of fan base, something that's worth getting behind and supporting.
Right, well, that brings another episode to an end. We will see you next week to go through the Charlton game if we both make it out alive. Hopefully I'm not too hungover on the Sunday morning. But thank you again, Chris, for joining me. Thank you, everybody else, for watching. And up the Imps, Chris.
Up the Imps.